Hello there and welcome to Equity Story. My name is Dawid Malinowski. Lovely for you guys to tune in. Today we are going to talk about innovation, but again in a different way. We are going to talk about financial and capital markets, and I can hardly imagine anyone more fitting and better with whom I could have this discussion than Ludwik Sobolewski. The former CEO and president of the Warsaw Stock Exchange, as well as the Bucharest Stock Exchange, a serial executive, I can probably say that's probably fair enough, and a lawyer on top of that. So yeah, Ludwik, thank you so much for coming and welcome to the show.
David, thank you for the invitation. Looking forward to.
So essentially, it is, I think, fair to say that you had an illustrious career to date, many fantastic opportunities, related to capital markets, but also, working as a lawyer, so, and the business executive as well. So, needless to say, there's no point in me introducing you too much to our viewers here in Poland, but I suppose for the benefit of those people who are watching in the United Kingdom, the US or Canada, perhaps you would be you would not mind telling a bit about your career today and about yourself.
David, thank you for the kind words and thank you for having me today. I think I was quite lucky to have lived in very interesting times, starting from the 90s. So when I was about to start my professional career, which in fact began when I started working at the Jagiellonian University in Krakow, but it was a quite short period of time. And then when I started my professional work at the capital market in Poland, this was the time when everything was
the state of flux changing.
Yeah, this was really a sort of a revolution.
It was super exciting, yes.
More putting it more straightforward, a revolution. Right?
So essentially when the communism collapsed and
the so-called communism, this is a little bit, journalism to describe this, quite long period of Polish history with this term, but indeed it had very little to do with the modern capitalism. So we created a lot of institutions and infrastructure completely unknown beforehand, right? So, and one of the symbols of this new time, of this new era, was the Warsaw Stock Exchange, or a stock exchange, right? And the whole capital market associated with it. And it was also a revolution as regards the regulations and the standards and the practices, market practices. Pretty much everything was covered by this new, by this transformation, which started at the beginning of the 90s and didn't end that fast, because I think we finished using abundantly, I would say, this term of a transformation only a few years ago. So I remember when I landed in Romania, and when because I was appointed the CEO of the Bucharest Stock Exchange, then I very naturally heard and used the term of a Polish transformation as the example of a success in the region. And nobody reacted. For everyone, it was very understandable and very legitimate to use this term, because we all felt at that time, and it was not that long ago, that long time ago. It was like 5-7 years from the moment we speak today. So still this transformation was perceived as something which very truly described the historical moment in which we are all together. So maybe I'm answering a little bit enigmatically your questions. So also in order to, as you said, to give a few details on my career. So especially that I'm making these allusions to the capital markets. So my career there started with my role of executive vice president at the Polish Central Securities Depository. So an institution which every developed capital market must simply have, right? So this is an equivalent of VTCC in the United States. So it is an institution which combines the function of holding all dematerialized securities and also clearing and settling trades. At first, it was mainly about stock exchange, on-exchange executed trades, but now it covers almost, the very high spectrum of transactions in financial instruments in Poland. So I spent there around 10, 11 years, and it was, as I said before, a very emotional period, saturated with a lot of things that we introduced, starting from the very dematerialized system of securities. So Poland was, I would say, a pioneer in that regard, because at the beginning of the 90s, only France introduced a very coherent and mandatory system of, book entry and electronic form for securities. So it was a sort of novelty that we followed exactly this path, and we said, of course, through the respective laws, that when it comes to securities traded on the organized markets, it must not bear the physical form, right? So it was like an uncompromised.
It's being at the forefront of innovation, essentially.
Yes. So because also it was relatively easy to introducing innovations
when you were building the whole thing from the scratch, really.
Exactly. You only need to have the let's say the internal courage and determination to achieve it. But when you are building something on the territory which resembles a desert, then you have a sort of liberty, right?
Yeah, I suppose it's easy, as you say, to build something using the newest, most cutting-edge technologies at the time, when you have just a level kind of ground and a site to build on, as opposed to renovating a vintage old cottage and making it eco-friendly, whatever. Yeah, fair enough.
This is a good analogy. So then a couple of years after this, first years, we also launched a market for derivatives for more sophisticated instruments than bonds or shares. In that regard, we were not anymore pioneers. We were rather, imitating or following the models existing from, almost centuries.
Or good practices existing somewhere else.
Good practices, and of course, the role of this institution I was working for was essential because, as you may guess, as you know, and some of our viewers might guess, the more sophisticated the instrument, the financial instrument is, the more important or even crucial is the how to ensure the settlement, the transfer of money and
the infrastructure essentially,
and the whole depository system, the deposits which guarantee that the counterparty will get what is due to him to it, and so on and so forth. So it was really a kind of an adventure, and I didn't have even for a second a feeling that I was working in the, let's say, not
In a
romantic,
conventional sense.
not romantic, connotation
That
of
is
this
fa-
word. It was like
Uh-huh.
really like a passion, and it was very like very healthy from this point of view.
That is pretty cool because I can almost see it with my, with sort of, with my mind's eyes, really.
Yeah.
How it must have been fast-paced, new, exciting, building, and then building the whole capital market scene in Poland, and then seeing it evolve and take a gear up and up. And also, at the same time, as we're talking, I can see the excitement in your face when you reminisce.
Yes, it's still vivid.
Uh-huh.
And you're reminding me, David, something that everything which was achieved and built during the 90s, it was really big steps, big projects, and almost everyone, each of them, was completed within months at most. Like it didn't take years to set up a stock exchange or the settlement, clearing, and depository function facility. So we even had it's one of my favorite jokes, which I share with the first CEO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange, Warsaw, Ludwik. We used to say that it was completely impossible to establish a stock market within a period of 6 months. But we were lucky of being ignorant of this. And because of our ignorance and our lack of knowledge about this impossibility, we did it, right? So, and then, then I started my mission as the CEO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange, which of course was at the moment when the market was almost fully fledged. But I saw a great and quite large room for some improvements, and most of all, chance for the Warsaw Stock Exchange to become something more than a local
a regional stock
yeah,
exchange.
So we managed to create a sort of interest and even a hype from many, like expressed by many market participants who shared our vision that yes, this is something that we would really deserve by the size of the market, by its modernity, now to reach out to the whole region and and it became my primary objective to transform the capital market in Poland into what I used to call a little London, right? So
like a hub, essentially.
Like a hub, and it was translated into very concrete actions, because you can say, a hub also as a sort of a metaphor or very superficial PR, but it was to be translated into very practical strategic goals, like, for instance, attracting foreign companies to
list here,
to list here,
of course.
which was really something new. That now the stock market, the Warsaw Stock Exchange, and the whole infrastructure was started being recognized by entrepreneurs from outside of Poland, and within a couple of years we managed to attract to the floor of the Warsaw Stock Exchange roughly 50 companies,
from the CE
which was
region.
not nothing, because even 50 comparing to the all the companies listed in Poland, it was quite impressive. From almost every country of the Central and Eastern Europe region, including Austria, but also, yeah, of course, but also from other markets like Israel or London Stock Exchange when it was, or Sweden.
That's interesting. So it's not just CE, but
it's not just CE, and half of this number of companies were listed uniquely in Warsaw, and more or less the other
Dual
half
listings.
dual listings, right? So, which was also a proof of the efficiency of our story, because our story was, of course, we also managed to, to recommend our market to a lot of Ukrainian companies.
I was going to say there is still, I believe, a big Ukraine index.
Yes, of course, because this was one of important, let's say, secondary but still important goals to create a sort of a capital bridge between Poland and Romania. Sorry, not Romania. This is another country which is close to my heart. But
I was going to say we'll get to that as well.
Yes, but I meant obviously Ukraine. Ukraine, which completely lacked a developed capital market infrastructure, which we had, right?
Of course.
But they had interesting businesses that could, could at least try to be, presented on the market. So among these around 50 companies, we had 10 plus companies from Ukraine. Legally from other countries, because Ukraine didn't allow companies at that time to list directly their shares, the shares of the Ukrainian companies. Yes, on foreign exchanges. So they normally set up holding companies in either the Netherlands or Luxembourg, and then these companies were listed. So now coming back to this concept of Poland as the regional hub, it was also through convincing international brokers to become the members, the direct members of the stock exchange, of WSE, and of course to execute transactions,
of
right?
Course.
To involve them,
participate
even
in the market,
because of course they were present to a certain extent even before, but the form of this presence consisted in placing orders on the market through Polish
intermediaries,
local brokers, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that it will be even more beneficial for the Polish market if we create a sort of more direct commitment between them and
the market,
and the supply of financial instruments in Poland. So all of a sudden, it turned out. I remember this moment very well when it was in 2009. It was even before we conducted the IPO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange itself, which is also like a milestone in the history of the Polish capital market.
Exchange listed
in 2010.
Yeah.
In 2010, so obviously on its own floor after a spectacular, really, international IPO. But what I was going to say that sometime in the second half of 2009, so more or less, quite exactly a year before the debut of the WSE, and 1 year, more or less 1 year. So we were in the middle of the global financial crisis, no doubt. A journalist called me. Mr. President, how would you comment that the turnover on the markets of the Warsaw Stock Exchange is bigger than of Vienna Stock Exchange, right? So, which quite honestly, it was news for me, because for some time I didn't follow these statistics between us and Vienna, and maybe I should.
So you took it by surprise.
I should have a word of comment on this, because this sort of competition between Vienna Stock Exchange and the Warsaw Stock Exchange, it was a sort of like a perennial subject, and it's also a kind of a buzzword, So we used to compare ourselves with Vienna, because Vienna was like the closest to us, like a very well-developed market from this Western capitalistic world, which was geographically
proximate to us.
Exactly. So it came quite naturally that we were compared.
Drawing comparisons.
And we were for years as a sort of like a minor, younger brother or even quite younger brother in this, let's say, in this liaison. And all of a sudden, and I got to know it. I learned about it from this, call from the journalist. All of a sudden, we were larger than Vienna as regards the turnover, which is like the most important
metric, essentially.
Parameter, like a descriptive note about the significance of a market within these international comparisons. So we thought, wow.
When did that happen?
Something happened. When did it happen? Yeah. I remember I called immediately my guys from the Warsaw, from the respective, department, and I said, listen, apparently we are now bigger than Vienna. Let's check the statistics for that. So it turned out that it happened to us during this 2009 to be bigger, but it was not like a continuum yet. Like it was not consequential. And then we were, soon after this call from a journalist.
The situation reverted back to what it was, or not? No.
No.
Okay.
We stabilized. We really kept this leadership, and moreover, soon after this call, we were, bigger than all stock exchanges in the region, including Vienna, put together. So it was really a sign of, let's say, our regional role.
And the general trajectory, you think, as well, as to the things to come.
And the general trajectory was really, this was a sort of a pride. We had also a lot of IPOs, so new companies coming to the market. I remember I had a speech in Davos during the economic forum. So we organized an event about the Polish capital market. It was not in the big hall there, but it was like a side event.
No, it's still
accompanying. But still, it was in Davos, right? So, so I started my speech by saying something like, "Look, maybe you don't associate Poland with a country which keeps number 1 or 2 in anything, but I have a great pleasure to inform you that it is the situation as regards the number and the value of new offerings. I mean the number
capital
of
markets,
because according to the statistics, really it was we were sometimes even number 1, sometimes number 2 or 3, the whole European continent plus UK. So it was really something. Also, we owe it, so to speak, to the creation of a market for small and medium-sized companies.
So the sort of Polish equivalent of the London AIM. So the new
exactly so. Yes, yeah. And we were extremely inspired by the success of AIM market, and AIM is for very larger companies than the New Connect, because we have.
That's true. I mean, come to think about it, it's true. Yes.
Yeah. Like the characteristics of both economies now come into play. But nevertheless, the New Connect turned out to be a huge success. By the way, now we have around 500 companies listed there, again with some international names. And it was the first such market in the region, in Eastern Europe, or Central Eastern Europe. And it was, very pleasant, and really we were extremely happy when, for instance, we were receiving emails or calls from our colleagues from Sao Paulo Stock Exchange, Brazil, asking us if they could come to Warsaw, because they are now in the process of projecting such a market, which is like less regulated than their regulated markets. and really creating an opportunity for small businesses to have a route, to have the access to the capital market. So they were asking if they could come and whether we could share our experiences, and so it was really, and they really did. So like I'm now dropping this example, but there were many of this kind. So also creating new markets was essentially important. So the new connect as a market for equities, for this lower range of companies in terms of
more innovative companies, gaming,
innovative
for instance.
And of course some of them really flourished and
moved to the main market, for example.
Exactly, they migrated to the main market, which was like one of the assumptions when we
So is it the junior floor? You do well, and then you get to.
Of course, with the market valuation getting higher, and all the figures improving, it was very logic for those companies to migrate to the main floor, because there they could count on new type of investors. For instance, pension funds or investment funds, they were a little bit present on the new content market, which was again quite telling, quite significant, quite
indicative
quite important.
of
The best expression. Indicative of of that it is something serious. This junior market.
There was trust and confidence to a degree, to the extent I would imagine. Obviously, you are the experts here, so correct me if I'm wrong. But to the extent that their internal kind of investment guidelines allowed them, to invest in something outside of the main market.
Of course.
So it's essentially just like in London,
they saw
really.
some, interesting, investment teams or investable companies. But of course, we should also say, I should also admit that there were also some, disappointments or failures listed on this market. By the way, this is very natural for the stock market, and even on on the regulated market, we had a lot of even shocking, sadly.
But it happens everywhere.
It happens. This because what is traded on the stock market is not really a financial instrument, but amounts of risk and chances, right? So this is what is tradable. These new markets, and also I should mention Catalyst, which was the first ever created and functional markets for debt instruments, so for bonds, basically for bonds, corporate bonds, municipal bonds, and also government bonds. So this was, a lot of satisfaction to see that the stock exchange is gaining this, traction, like a good traction with the local market participants, including the end investors, and also this international reputation, I would say. So, I cannot refrain from mentioning, the IPO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange, where we had, of course, a tranche dedicated to retail investors, and if I remember well,
what was the oversubscription?
I have to remember it well, but I'm not sure about like the end figures. But over 320,000 people, like normal people.
Yeah, retail
normal
investors,
individuals,
of course. Yeah,
they subscribed for the shares.
as it shows the interest and confidence as well.
Thank you for saying that. And this was really a tremendous time. And trust, and also maybe even something deeper. It was a proof, or it was an expression of that the Warsaw Stock Exchange was really standing for a symbol. Like it had this symbolic content or meaning, which really positively, or maybe I would remove this word of positively, but it affected, the mindset, or it formed the mindset.
Yeah.
So people, I think that people could perceive the stock exchange in this way. Okay, we might have, or we do have some, complaints, disappointments. It is not, for instance, something that always allows us or let us to earn money. Or,
But then again, if you can show me,
But we are not staying indifferent.
It's not stagnant. It revolves.
No, what I mean was that we are not, like passing with indifference. So, in a sense, this is ours. This is ours. So in our mindset, the Warsaw Stock Exchange is not something external, but this is something like like also our baby, sort of, right? And I used to explain this enormous interest that was manifested at time through the power of this symbolic science and the power of these mindsets. By the way, if I were to compare, and I won't do it because it would take us too much time, but if I were to very, briefly and in a very concise way to compare the Polish capital market and other capital markets that were created during these transformations, the former, as you said, communist.
The Eastern Europe sort of
Eastern
transformation.
Europe. Yeah. Excluding Vienna, excluding Austria this time, of course. So one of these, differences was that we really had a kind of community in Poland. So
gathered around the financial markets.
Yes,
Okay.
like normal people with their normal lives,
with interest
but
in
interested,
the stock exchange.
getting together, discussing, at the beginning, physically, offline, as we now say.
You would, yes.
Then, with internet, it was even expanding more intensively. So there was this interest, people coming to the debuts, sharing thoughts and this sort of thing, this sort of phenomenon. So there was such a community, and this was really a distinctive mark of the Polish market, which enormously helped in in developing it, because the turnover was growing, and the share in this turnover generated by individual investors was constantly at the level of more or less 1/3 of the whole figure. So we had now, unfortunately, these proportions have slightly deteriorated, but
I was going to
at
actually
the best period it was like like golden share, I would say, or division. So one share was coming from, in terms of the turnover, one share was coming from international investors, mainly institutional ones. One share from the one third from the Polish domestic institutional investors, and the last 1/3 from individuals. So it was like a very, very nice
balance, effectively.
because neither of this group was not like the other way around. The market was not too much dependent on the prices, the pricing, the valuations, not too much dependent. Of course, if one of these categories massively, would outflow, pulls out, right? Then it would be hugely, catastrophic.
Or disruptive to put it nicely.
But such things rather never happen. So it was a very safe and secure structure.
Let me ask you this. So we spoke about how the whole thing developed, how it gained traction, really in depth, frankly. But what is your view, kind of briefly speaking, as to what the future holds? Obviously, I appreciate the fact that even you as a person who was at the forefront of the capital markets in Poland, the region, for so many years, you don't have a crystal ball, right? But in your sort of gut feeling, what is next in store for the capital markets in Poland and in the region? What is the next challenge, perhaps? Because again, we do live in these interesting, in the Chinese sense, times, right? With what has been going on for the past few years. But what's next? What do you reckon?
Now we live the time when all the main characteristics of the system of the capital market in Poland has already been constructed, figured out, invented sometimes, and then established. So I think, or this is my quite firm opinion, so it's even stronger than I think, that this romantic period is completely over.
So the honeymoon is done and dusted.
This sort of I used to quote Winston Churchill, the success is never complete, the failure is never fatal.
Yeah.
The most important is to have a courage. So now this courage is required to I would say lower extent.
Okay.
But still, there should be a lot of work put into a sort of a renaissance when it comes to the interest coming from entrepreneurs to the stock market, because the current feeling of businesses, of business and companies, and speaking more even largely of entrepreneurs of any sort, is that the market is drastically over-regulated, which is not that much a fault, if I can use this term, of the people of the capital market in Poland, because unfortunately it comes mostly from the European Union.
From Brussels, that they have the sort of merry bureaucracy that produces.
I thought that
laws.
The British will, if they can gain anything out of Brexit, which has been quite doubtful for me, then I thought that the one thing that they could get out of it beneficial for them would be to really
relax
inject
sort of,
more liberty into the city of London, which I have the impression this chance is not yet used, but still they have this chance, right? While this dramatic overregulation of the financial market, which is imposed by the bodies of the European Union, is a constant fact which really limits smaller markets like the Polish one, or not necessarily only the markets in the eastern part of the EU. But putting this aside, we still could have intensify our efforts in order to regain this traction, or this good relation, very productive relation between the market operators and the businesses, and the same between the market operators and investors of different type. And we should of course come back with a message that could be understood and listened to by in markets and countries where it is still significantly underdeveloped, and moreover, their capital markets, or markets for capital, And moreover, there is something more that we know already, and we were not quite sure about this 10, 15, 20 years ago. There are markets in our neighborhood which will never get to this, more important role in the local economies. So, but there are companies there, and also investors seeking for, either raising capital or investing in, liquid, interesting assets. So, what I wanted to say is that 20 years ago, some countries in the region, I will not name them, still had a sort of a chance that they will, get this importance and this, this significance for the local economies. Now this is over. I mean, this is now closed. It is now closed chapter for them. They, of course, they have a role they play, but this is not something that is really, let's say, progressive. With one exception, which is my favorite country in the in the region. Of course, I'm subject to a sort of a personal bias, and I'm referring to Romania.
I was going to say, because obviously you had a stint in Romania, and you also exported the knowledge and the experience from Poland for the benefit of that, local capital market.
This is what they expected me to do when Lucian Angel, my friend at the time, the chairman of the board of directors of the Bucharest Stock Exchange, sent me an email. It was in March or April 2013, and he was saying in this email, "Mr. Sobolewski, we met a few times in the past, which quite frankly I hardly remember, and we exchanged thoughts about capital markets, and now we would like to have a very important conversation with you." Right?
So you looked at it and it was like, okay, here's my new adventure.
Yeah, I thought, there is something serious underneath, right? This email. So Romania in 2013 was classified as a frontier market. So there is this categorization of markets starting from developed, then emerging markets, and frontier, which is already not a good news for international investors.
It's a challenge.
Frontier means okay, the legal system is not
perfect.
Stable, not perfect to say the least, probably. Some doubts about whether there are or there aren't restrictions on exporting gains or access to the market from
so capital controls and stuff like that. Yeah.
The liquidity of the market is really at the level which communicates that the market risk is high. So it was the point of departure when I landed in Romania in 2013. But quite soon I realized that there are a lot of extremely competent and intelligent, smart people who wanted a change to happen. So they were already tired with their own frustrations, because looking through the figures, one descriptive note about Romania has been true and will be true. This is the second market. This is the second market after Poland
in terms of size of the economy and stuff in the region.
Size of the economy, number of population, and I'm very happy now to hear that Romania is now upgraded to emerging market category. It happens soon after my end of my four years work there.
Well, then it's fair to say well done.
Thank you. On behalf of all the people involved, also those who continued my work when I was already back to Poland. and such features as GDP per capita. It is really impressive. Still, Romania is a country which has very wide or like the social stratification is like the differences in income, the differences between cities and
more severe than here, essentially.
Yes, this is quite still.
It's not as even as important, but perhaps fair to say.
Yes, yes, it is. So, but the very recent progress Romania made as regards technological innovations. Like one of the very, very few unicorns born in the Eastern Europe is UiPath, which is robotization of processes. Essentially Romanian company years ago, now listed on the New York Stock Exchange with the market value in the order of 8-9 billions USD, right? So really,
there are success stories essentially.
This society clearly evolves into like a really predominantly good as regards or distinctive as regards technology,
services
and the new lifestyle epitomized by the technology. So I'm in love with Romania, so don't let me speak too much about this. Fascinating years for me personally. I also learned to speak Romanian, which I never thought it could ever happen in my life, which was not that much necessary, by the way, because everyone
speaks English.
And normally it is excellent English. I mean, almost everyone which is connected to business, not only to the capital market or to the financial world, but really, Romanians are phenomenal as regards their ability.
They are multilingual now.
Languages.
Come to think about it, because they know how to. Well, because the Romanian language is a Roman language, they tend to quite easily pick up Italian, French, Spanish as well, to, I suppose, a lesser extent.
It's even, more profound than a Roman language, because as far as I know, Romanian language is considered to be the closest, from
to
the
Latin?
linguistical perspective, to Latin.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think I've heard
So,
that.
So, the DNA works. And
just to get, slightly closer to home. So your new book thank you so much for bringing it with you.
Thank you.
So the book, for those of you obviously who can't read Polish, the title is Just Doing.
Just do it, yes.
Do it, yes. So it's a fairly new thing for you. So first of all, please accept my congratulations. So it must be a massive thing to have your work published. And my first question is if you would be if it would be all right with you to give our viewers a sort of a sneak preview, if you like. So to the extent that you can, to kind of let in people on what to expect, what themes, what ideas are you covering in your work?
Despite what the title might suggest, just do it. It's not about business or my professional career, but this is predominantly about my travels or traveling, which is the object of my life, and it's really something that is a very important part of my identity, if I may say so. So it is about the travels which I did in the past, but it is for sure not a guidebook or
There's no self-help
or
category.
this descriptions about countries and landscapes and or people whom I met. Traveling and this external world is always there, but for me, traveling was always a metaphor of my own life and of people's lives. So this book contains a lot of my very intimate thoughts about who I am myself. What kind of thoughts were crossing my mind when I was traveling. Sort of analysis about why we travel at all, right? So
more reflective work at the intersection, essentially, of travel and self in the reflection and philosophy, you might say, as well, as far as
I try to give this a little bit philosophical perspective about people who travel for different motivations or purposes, but very often because of they need to find like a sort of counter words or to get out of the common normality and to be confronted, to be facing different words.
So to break the routine and take yourself out of that bubble of your work, your everyday life, and get a different perspective, perhaps.
And to get new acquisitions in the sense of new self, new thoughts, new goals. I try to somehow describe the genre or the kind of this book, and I had a difficulty in defining this kind, and all of a sudden I saw a term of memoir. So all French sounding terms,
fancy.
I like them, right? So, and I thought, a memoir. This is really
fitting,
sounds a little bit, archaic or old-fashioned, rather. But this is the most adequate, categorization or definition. Enormous pleasure, to write a book, but all other, discoveries that true writers had before me were confirmed. This is really a hard work, and
when you see, so you refer to the fact that when you
I refer to the fact when you I refer to the very process, to the very process, to continuously write a book every day, or trying to doing it every day, and then I realized what, as I said, many people discovered beforehand, that writing a book is not really about writing a book. This is a process of rewriting. So you write the first version, and then you have to read it, and then, as it was in my case, you might end up with asking yourself, it was exactly my case, really? This is me who formulated this sentence in such an awkward way, right? So writing is not just writing; it is
a process.
It is rewriting. Of course, I had everything under my control, so I could have decided how many these iterations I will have with my own production here, which is substantially different than what we have to face in business. And David, I'm sure you share the same feeling, because you're a lawyer. So whether being a lawyer or a manager of the capital market, we cannot release our products saying to our clients, But of course, if you don't like it, I will correct it.
That's not how you build confidence.
This is
in your
not how
work,
you
no.
can really
that's
expose yourself to the
Yes.
market. So
I would agree. Yes, that most
yeah.
definitely.
And moreover, when you know, sitting on a project, on a business project, you don't have an undefined time. I mean, resources
Are finite,
are limited.
yes.
You have to control your cost, the expectations of the market. This is, of course, more in-house work, but truly creating a lot of satisfaction, but through a lot of efforts and tortures that that are on the way.
But looking at you and you're listening how you talk about that process, in spite of it being at times fiddly, difficult, or just annoying, when you kind of said that you thought to yourself, have I actually written this sentence? Like, oh my god! Despite that, I can see that a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of a lot of enthusiasm on your part went into that, and a lot of satisfaction you got out of the process. So I suppose.
What can I say?
Well,
it's very true.
But it's the
So
best testament to to a book, in terms of whether people should read it. I mean, if so much went into it.
Even during our talk, I felt that maybe I have a sort of moral obligation to write something on the history of the Polish and regional capital market, which will probably another memoir of mine.
Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching us. My guest today, Ludwik Sobolewski. Thank you so much, sir, for coming. And I'm Dawid Malinowski. So see you next week. Take care.